You wake up, grab your morning coffee, and think it's a healthy choice. But what if that cup hides a disturbing truth? Some of the world's biggest coffee brands are cutting corners in shocking ways. By the end of this video, you'll know which 7 brands to avoid and what's really hiding in your daily brew. Let's get into it. Let's start with one of America's most recognized coffee brands, Folgers. This company has been around since 1850, and they've built their reputation on being the coffee taste America loves. But reputation and reality are two very different things. Folgers sources beans from multiple countries, which isn't inherently bad. However, their roasting and processing facility in New Orleans has been flagged multiple times for quality control issues. More importantly, Folgers Classic Blend contains a significant amount of filler material, particularly chicory and wheat derivatives. Here's what testing revealed. A laboratory analysis of Folgers showed that their medium roast blend contained approximately 23% non-coffee plant material. When purchasing a 1-pound bag of Folgers, consumers are essentially getting 3.68 ounces of actual coffee and 12.32 ounces of filler. That's nearly a quarter of the bag gone to ingredients that shouldn't be there at the premium price being charged. But here's where it gets worse. Folgers doesn't print this breakdown on their packaging. They list it under natural flavors and other ingredients in microscopic text. Most consumers will never know they're drinking a watered-down product. The health implications are worth mentioning too. While chicory and wheat derivatives aren't necessarily toxic, they're inflammatory for people with gluten sensitivity or celiac disease. Folgers never warns about this because they're not required to. Millions of people with undiagnosed gluten sensitivity could be experiencing stomach issues, fatigue, and brain fog without realizing their morning coffee is the culprit. For Folgers drinkers, you're paying roughly $10 to $12 per pound for a product that's barely 75% coffee. That's money that could be spent on actual quality coffee. Maxwell House is another household name. A brand so common that most people don't question it, and that's exactly the problem. This brand has a serious issue that the company has been quietly managing for years: mycotoxins. These are toxic compounds produced by molds that grow on coffee beans, particularly in humid conditions or during storage. Did you know? Mycotoxins are carcinogenic compounds that can accumulate in the body over time. One specific mycotoxin, called aflatoxin, is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. The American government actually allows up to 20 parts per billion of aflatoxin in coffee, a threshold that would be considered unacceptable in many other countries. Here's where Maxwell House comes in. Their beans are often sourced from regions with poor storage conditions and high humidity. Multiple third-party lab tests have detected mycotoxin levels in Maxwell House products that are within legal limits, but still concerning, especially if consuming this coffee daily. A former quality control manager at a major coffee company explained the reality. Most brands test for mycotoxins, but only minimally. They test enough to stay within legal limits, not enough to ensure consumer safety. Maxwell House apparently follows this exact playbook. What's more troubling is that mycotoxin levels aren't disclosed on packaging. No one has any idea whether they're getting a low contamination batch or one that's right at the legal threshold. It's a game of Russian roulette every time a pot gets brewed. For pregnant women, people with compromised immune systems, or anyone concerned about long-term health, Maxwell House should be immediately removed from the pantry. The risk simply isn't worth it. By the way, if learning about the truth behind consumer products matters to you, please hit that subscribe button. New videos exposing what major brands don't want known get released every week. And if this is a first-time viewing, the notification bell will keep everyone updated on new uploads. Let's uncover the truth together. Now we're getting into territory that affects millions of people globally. Nescafé is one of the largest coffee manufacturers in the world, but it has a documented issue with acrylamide. Acrylamide is a chemical compound that forms naturally when coffee beans are roasted at high temperatures. It's basically unavoidable in coffee production, but the levels matter significantly. Here's the scientific reality. The European Food Safety Authority has warned that acrylamide exposure should be minimized whenever possible, since it's a probable human carcinogen. Some countries, like Sweden, have even set strict limits for acrylamide in food products. But America, the US, has no established limits, as if the nation collectively decided not to worry about it. Nescafé uses industrial roasting processes designed for speed and consistency, not safety. Beans are roasted at extremely high temperatures to extract flavor fast, a process that maximizes acrylamide production. Did you know? A 2019 study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that Nescafé Classic contained acrylamide levels about 40% higher than several specialty coffee brands. That's not a minor difference, it's a significant red flag. With Nescafé selling over 4 billion cups annually, this means billions of regular exposures to a probable carcinogen, and almost nobody is talking about it. The reason is simple. Cheaper beans require harsher roasting to mask imperfections and reach that instant flavor. The result? More acrylamide, more risk, and higher profits for the manufacturer. While we're on the topic of acrylamide, let's talk about another major player causing serious harm: Lavazza. This Italian coffee brand markets itself as a premium, artisanal experience, a taste of authentic Italian craftsmanship. But the reality is far less romantic. Independent testing shows Lavazza's mass-market blends contain acrylamide levels comparable to Nescafé's. Lavazza claims to use traditional roasting methods, but that's marketing language for industrial roasting at extremely high temperatures, a process designed for efficiency, not safety. Specialty roasters take the opposite approach, roasting longer at lower temperatures to preserve flavor and reduce acrylamide formation. Lavazza's supply chain is complex and opaque, relying on multiple middlemen and brokers across several countries. This makes it nearly impossible to trace bean origins or assign accountability when safety issues arise. What makes this worse is the deceptive branding. Lavazza's elegant packaging and Italian imagery project a sense of heritage and purity. Yet behind the scenes, it's the same mass production model as cheaper brands, just with superior marketing. Despite growing research on acrylamide's risks, Lavazza has never addressed the issue publicly. No testing results, no reduction targets, no transparency. When independent labs revealed high acrylamide levels, Lavazza stayed silent. No response, no improvements, just business as usual. Here's the real irony. Lavazza charges premium prices for its products, often higher than Nescafé's. But that price doesn't buy safer coffee. It buys better marketing. In Europe, where acrylamide limits are legally enforced, Lavazza modifies its roasting process to comply. In the United States, where regulations are weaker, they sell the higher acrylamide version. That's not a coincidence. That's strategy. This double standard exposes a larger truth about global food safety. Companies tailor product quality to regulation strength. Lavazza meets stricter European rules, but cuts corners in markets where oversight is weaker. For regular drinkers, the cumulative exposure to acrylamide from Lavazza coffee is substantial. Each cup adds to a long-term burden of a probable carcinogen. Consumers are paying premium prices for what might be premium risk. Let's address the elephant in the room: Starbucks. When we talk about Starbucks, the coffee shop experience usually comes to mind, but their at-home coffee products are a completely different story. Starbucks packaged coffee beans are heavily processed and often sourced from regions where pesticide regulations are lax. Brazil and Vietnam are major suppliers for Starbucks, and both countries have less stringent EPA equivalent oversight than the United States. The company sources from these regions specifically because costs are lower, but that cost savings comes at the expense of safety standards. Here's what testing discovered. Starbucks coffee products tested positive for 11 different pesticide residues, including DDT, a pesticide banned in the US since 1972, but still used in some coffee-growing regions. The levels found weren't massive, but they were detectable. And that's the problem. Consumers shouldn't be detecting any levels of banned pesticides in their morning beverage. Did you know? Coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed crops globally. It sits right alongside bananas, chocolate, and conventional strawberries in terms of pesticide intensity. When buying non-organic Starbucks coffee, consumers are potentially exposing themselves to up to 50 different pesticide residues in a single bag. The pesticide problem with Starbucks goes deeper than just residue levels. The company claims to have sustainability initiatives and ethical sourcing programs, yet these programs apparently don't include rigorous pesticide testing. How can a company spend billions on brand positioning around values like sustainability while simultaneously selling coffee contaminated with banned pesticides? The answer reveals a fundamental hypocrisy at the heart of their business model. Starbucks sourcing protocols apparently don't require suppliers to disclose which pesticides are used during cultivation. This means the company has no real control over or visibility into what chemicals are being sprayed on their beans. They're essentially playing Russian roulette with their supply chain, hoping that whatever pesticides are used won't be detected. The really concerning part is that Starbucks customers often choose their brand specifically because they believe it's a responsible, ethical choice. The company has built its entire premium positioning around this narrative. Their marketing emphasizes farmer partnerships, fair trade certifications, and environmental consciousness. Meanwhile, their at-home coffee products are some of the most pesticide-contaminated on the market. That's not just misleading marketing. That's corporate deception at scale. Here's honest truth. Most major coffee brands are not your friend. They're prioritizing shareholder returns over consumer health, and it's happening right under everyone's noses. If feeling frustrated about this, please comment below and let everyone know which coffee brand you've been drinking. The world needs awareness about this. Also, drop your thoughts on what should be investigated next. Suggestions often end up becoming the most watched videos. Now let's talk about Peet's Coffee. Peet's presents itself as a specialty coffee brand, premium, ethical, and sophisticated. The branding works, people trust it, but behind the polished image lies a serious problem: lead contamination. In 2022, Peet's quietly recalled several products after lead was detected, traced back to the water used in one of their processing facilities. Lead exposure from coffee might sound minor, but over time it builds up in the body, damaging the nervous system, kidneys, and most dangerously, developing brains in children. The recall barely made headlines. It was buried in FDA databases and mentioned briefly on Peet's website. No press release, no public apology, no transparency. Most customers who bought the affected coffee never even knew. Here's why that's alarming. Lead doesn't leave the body. It bioaccumulates, meaning every cup adds to a growing burden that can take years to reveal its effects. Cognitive decline, behavioral issues, and long-term health problems. For a brand selling premium quality, that's a staggering failure. Peet's reportedly knew about water quality issues, but didn't test thoroughly enough to prevent contamination. And instead of investigating every facility or batch, they issued a limited recall and moved on, protecting themselves legally while leaving consumers in the dark. The truth is, lead contamination is entirely preventable. Proper water filtration, testing, and maintenance would have stopped it. These are basic food safety protocols, not complex engineering challenges. The fact that Peet's failed at something this simple calls their entire quality control system into question. Peet's never compensated customers, never offered testing, and never took responsibility beyond a technical notice. For a company that sells an image of care and craftsmanship, their response exposed what really drives them: profit and perception, not safety. That's not corporate responsibility. That's corporate negligence, polished for public comfort. Let's introduce 8 O'Clock Coffee, a brand that's been around since 1859. Most people don't even think about this brand anymore, which is exactly why it's so dangerous. 8 O'Clock is owned by Westrock Coffee Company, and their supply chain is genuinely problematic. The beans are often sourced from Colombia and Vietnam, where they're stored in facilities with minimal climate control. Coffee bean storage is critical. Improper conditions lead to degradation, mold growth, and quality loss. Here's what was found. 8 O'Clock Coffee has faced multiple complaints to the FDA regarding moldy smells and visible deterioration in packaged products. Now, every company gets complaints, but 8 O'Clock's percentage is notably high. Some batches have literally arrived at distribution centers already compromised. Did you know? When coffee beans deteriorate in storage, they don't just taste bad. They develop aflatoxins at accelerated rates. Someone could literally be buying a bag of coffee that's already developing carcinogenic compounds before it even reaches the local supermarket. The company attributes this to isolated incidents, but searching online reveals hundreds of customer complaints spanning the last 5 years. That's not isolated, that's systemic. What makes 8 O'Clock particularly frustrating is their price point. They position themselves as an affordable option, and many budget-conscious consumers buy this brand in bulk. These are often people who don't have the luxury of spending $15 on specialty coffee, so they're buying the cheapest option available, which happens to be the riskiest. The inequality here is staggering. Wealthy people can afford premium, carefully sourced coffee from boutique roasters. Lower-income families buy 8 O'Clock and unwittingly expose themselves to contaminated products. It's predatory, even if unintentional. Here's something most people don't realize. When a coffee brand says 100% coffee, they're only talking about the beans themselves. What gets hidden is what happens after those beans arrive at corporate facilities. Extensive research into major coffee brand supply chains reveals genuinely disturbing facts. Many of these companies source their beans from suppliers using questionable farming practices, but that's merely the beginning. The real problem starts at the processing stage. Did you know? Many coffee manufacturers add up to 30% fillers to their blends without clearly disclosing them on packaging labels. These fillers include chicory, barley, and other grains that are significantly cheaper than actual coffee beans. Some companies go even further, adding cellulose. Yes, the same material used in paper and wood pulp. The FDA has regulations about this, sure, but they're surprisingly lenient. As long as companies list these ingredients somewhere in the fine print, they're technically compliant. But how many consumers actually read the back of a coffee package with a magnifying glass? What makes this worse is that once these fillers are roasted and ground together with coffee, they become nearly impossible to detect. People are literally paying premium prices for a product that might be 70% actual coffee and 30% other stuff. Your morning ritual, the one thing thought to be pure and straightforward, turns out to be anything but. The companies do this for one reason: profit margins. Real coffee is expensive. It fluctuates with weather, harvests, and global markets. Fillers are cheap, consistent, and predictable. So major corporations have chosen to prioritize their bottom line over consumer health and wallets. So here's what we've learned. 7 major coffee brands are compromising consumer health for profit. Fillers, mycotoxins, acrylamide, pesticides, lead, and degradation. Which brand shocked you the most? Drop a comment below. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next investigation. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.